Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. If you're new around here, then welcome to the channel and thanks for following. If you're of the old school, if you've been with me for a while, then welcome back and thank you so much for your continued support. Now, those who watched a few of my videos will know that a lot of the time I'm banging on about quitting gambling and the mechanics of quitting and how to abstain and how to stay away from gambling. I also share a lot of my stories from when I was a gambler and a lot of the negatives and the bad impact on your life that can cause. Now, this is all very important, and I think it's important to understand the damage that gambling can cause, and I think it's important to understand the mechanics of how to stop. But what I wanted to talk about today, as it's nearly the weekend, well, it's not nearly the weekend, is it? It's Thursday morning, but I'm going to say it's nearly the weekend. It gives me an excuse for a nice positive video. I'm going to talk about the things I've noticed since I stopped gambling that have made me glad. They've made me glad I stopped gambling. It sounds a little bit sunshine and rainbows today, doesn't it? But it's damp and horrible outside, and I'm using the interior light to actually shed a bit of light on my face, so you lucky guys get to see me. Anyway, so I want to talk about the things I've noticed that are good in my life since I stopped gambling. Now, the reason I thought about this was that kind of this morning, really, I had a bit of a thought about, and it's the first time this has really sort of come to me, is about how little power gambling actually has and how insignificant it actually is as a part of everyday life. Now, gambling, back when I was gambling every day, obviously it was a substantial part of my life. It was something I thought about all the time. I had friendships built entirely around it. It was a big thing. And not just for me, it felt to me like everyone was doing it. There was gambling adverts on the TV all the time. You always saw people gambling. People were always talking about their bets. But I think that's because that was what you were listening to. It's only after 5 months or so now of abstaining and probably a year and a half in recovery in total, I'm basically taking off the couple of lapses that I've had, that I've realised that actually gambling is pretty powerless. It's pretty insignificant in the grand scheme of things. And this is why there's so many people who never bet, who never gamble. They're not, recovering gamblers necessarily. They're not people who have a moral objection or any kind of objection to gambling. They just don't do it. And it's just not part of their lives. And I'm hoping that eventually that will be my thought process full time. But there's been lots of stages leading up to that. Now, what I'll talk about first is one of the most obvious benefits of not gambling, and that is the absence of gambling hangovers. Now, I talk about gambling hangovers quite a lot in my videos, but I think any gambler will be able to very much relate to the prospect or the principle of a gambling hangover. Now, to me, a gambling hangover is that feeling you get in the morning. Normally hits you 5 or 10 seconds after you wake up. You get a nice little 5-10 second window of blissful ignorance, and then you remember you're gambling from the day before, and it hits you like a ton of bricks. You normally realize it's a loss. You then have to go and check your online bank, you check your wallet, whatever your method of gambling is, and you realize that yep, it's true, you did your bollocks, you did your brains, and then the gambling hangover hits you. And what will happen is you'll have to drag your ass out of bed. You have to get in the shower. You have to try and live a normal day. You'll have to try and live like a normal human. You'll have to get yourself to work. You'll have to try and function at work, when you know that day at work is pointless because the money you're earning, you lost 5-10-fold over the night before. That's the gambling hangover. And for me, the gambling hangover often followed a similar pattern. It wasn't just waking up and remembering the loss. It was waking up on the sofa, remembering the loss, with an actual hangover because I drowned my sorrows, and the realisation that actually it's Monday morning, because a lot of my gambling I did on a Sunday, on a Monday morning, and I really had to get out of bed and go to work, and that week never recovered. So that's the first positive. No gambling hangovers. I've been waking up, and yes, there are dull, grey, miserable mornings like this morning where I've woken up, I feel rubbish. I think I've got the coronavirus. I feel like absolute rubbish. I've got meetings all day at work today. I'm not looking forward to it. I'm sat here, I'm on the A12, the traffic's awful, but I don't have a gambling hangover, which makes the day instantly, I can deal with it. I can deal with what the day throws at me now because I don't have that gambling hangover. I can go onto my online banking, and I had exactly the same pathetically small amount in my account that I went to bed with, or that I remember going to bed with. I don't have any pending. That's the worst one, when your account balance still says the same and there's still those pending ones sat on there, and you know they're coming out, and invariably they do. So no gambling hangovers. Number one, positive observation. I'm just, like I say, just taking on to that. The financial predictability, I think, like I say, I mentioned checking your bank balance and realising there's actually as much money in there as you remember there being in there. You know, it hasn't randomly gone down because of some online gambling spree you had and you'd forgotten about. So what other benefits have I noticed? I've been sleeping better. I've actually been going to bed like a normal person does, not making excuses to go to bed later. And I'd make excuses to go to bed later for two reasons. Firstly, because I'd had a shocking loss, or I'd been gambling and my brain was still wired with gambling, and I know I wouldn't be able to sleep, so I thought, well, I'll stay up for a bit. You know, and I had to explain this to my wife, but obviously I had to make excuses, not, you know, that it wasn't gambling related. Or I wanted to stay up because I wanted to stay up and gamble. You know, again, I'd make excuses. I'd say I wasn't really tired. I might be knackered, but I'd say I wasn't really tired because I wanted to get some gambling in before I went to bed. So I've been sleeping better. I'm going to bed like a normal person, and I've been getting up like a relatively normal person. I've not been waking up in the middle of the night, sitting, tossing and turning, stressing about my finances, about what I'm going to do. Tied into that, I have more self-esteem. I'm not constantly having to beg money from people. I'm not having to beg loans off friends and family. I'm not having to remember what excuses I'm making. I'm not having to go cap in hand to my boss asking for an advance on my wages. I've not been any better off, you know, because I'm paying money back off my debts. But everything's been so much more predictable. I've been able to manage what money I've got. And like I say, I've not been having to make up excuses. I've not been having to make up lies, which means I'm not having to remember what I've told people, which is great. You know, there's always someone much smarter than myself once said, if you never tell a lie, you never have to remember anything. And that's so much the truth. And the amount of lies you tell when you're gambling, from little ones as to why you're late at home, to big whopping ones as to why you suddenly don't have any wages after payday, you know, all those lies that you tell, you then have to remember. And I've not had to do that. Like I say at the beginning of the video, seeing gambling for what it is, and I don't mean seeing gambling for this horrid, you know, addiction, this evil addiction. I do see it as that, but now I see it as just less of a relevance. It's just something that I don't do. And I can actually sit now in the pub or whatever and be more engaged. I feel more engaged in conversations. I feel more engaged with my friends, with my family when we're talking, because I haven't got either some bets I've got on in the back of my mind. You know, how are they getting on? I'm not thinking about, well, I might pop to the bookies on the way home. I wonder if I'm going to have time to pop to the bookies on the way home. I'm not thinking about the loss I had earlier that day or the previous night. So my brain is focused much more on the here and now, which has improved my relationship. You know, not just with my wife, but with my friends. I'm not disappearing off when we're in the pub to go and play the fruit machines all the time. It's improved my relationship with my family because I'm more present. I'm keeping in touch more with people. I'm less self-absorbed. And by self-absorbed, I mean I was stuck in a rut of feeding the gambling. I can now talk a lot more openly. I'm enjoying sport more. You know, I can actually go and watch football now and enjoy the game and not worry so much about the result. You know, actually, and quite conversely as well, I'm not watching a sport that I don't really care about. You know, if there's a game of football on the telly, I don't feel obliged to watch it just because I've got money on it. I'll go and I'll watch sport for pleasure now, rather than to monitor how my bets are getting on. And that's a great thing, you know. And the last one really, I made a video not so long ago, and I'll probably tag it above, about how things when you stop gambling get worse before they get better. And the basis of this was because when you stop gambling, particularly if you have financial problems, which most long-term compulsive gamblers will have, if you have financial problems, you have debts, you have all the rest of it, then it will feel like it gets worse before it gets better, because you'll have to address your situation. You'll have to actually take stock of where you are. You'll have to lift your head out of the sand and look at the damage you've caused and work out how you're going to start fixing this. That feels like a negative, but actually, subconsciously, we always know that's sitting there waiting for us. We know, I did, that there was this big ball of debt, this big ball of financial carnage that I'd caused, and I've been batting off and putting off, and I knew that was there waiting for me. This big ball, like the sword of Damocles over my head. You know, I knew it was there. And only when I stopped gambling and I started dealing with it, was it not there anymore. It was here. I was dealing with it, and it made bits of my life a little bit harder. And it was quite a lot of admin and stuff sorting all this out. Again, the videos are coming, I promise you. But it was no longer hanging over my head. It was one less dark cloud that was there. And trust me, having that weight lifted it's something to behold. It makes you feel instantly better. Not keeping the secrets. Actually, that last one wasn't the last one. Not keeping secrets. I'm not talking about the lies, you have to remember. I'm talking about not living this secret life. Talk to people. Most people will be understanding. Most people won't actually fully understand the dynamics of a gambling addiction. They won't probably understand why you do it. But a lot of people, thankfully now, a lot more people have heard of it because it's been a lot more publicised, and more people now realise that it is an actual mental health problem, and will be a lot more supportive and sympathetic, even if they don't really understand why you do it. So talk to people, get that weight lifted. Don't deal with everything on your own. Yes, you've got things you'll have to deal with. You'll have to deal with your debts. You'll have to deal with all of that on your own. That's your job. You know, you've made this hole. You need to get yourself out of it. But you can't start getting yourself out of it until you've addressed it. That was a hell of a waffly video. I want it to be a positive one, but I did touch on obviously a few negative things there. Thanks for watching. Like I say, sorry to have waffled, my gambling ramblings. But hopefully, yeah, trust me, if you're giving up gambling, things might seem tough to start with, but they do get better, and there's plenty to look forward to. Anyway, catch you on the next one, guys. Have a great day. In a bit.